escalating tensions between the United States and South Africa reached a fever pitch, with U.S. Secretary of State's scathing condemnation of Ebrahim Rasool, branding him a race-baiting politician who hates America and Donald Trump. This explosive accusation, delivered without immediate explanation from either the Secretary of State or Senator Rubio, ignited a firestorm of controversy, leaving many questioning the motivations behind this unprecedented attack. The seemingly abrupt condemnation followed a webinar hosted by a South African think tank, where Rasool addressed actions taken by the Trump administration, placing them within the context of a shifting U.S. demographic landscape, a future where white Americans will no longer constitute a majority. Senator Rubio, in a move that further fueled the flames, linked to a Breitbart article covering Rasool's talk, seemingly endorsing the article's interpretation of his words. This strategic use of a highly partisan news outlet immediately cast doubt on the objectivity of the U.S. government's position. The lack of transparency surrounding the timing and reasoning behind the Secretary of State's statement only served to deepen the suspicions. The incident marks another significant escalation in the already strained relationship between Washington and Pretoria. The simmering conflict was dramatically exacerbated earlier this year when the Trump administration froze U.S. aid to South Africa, citing a controversial land reform law. The accusation was that this law facilitated the seizure of land from white farmers, igniting a fierce debate that transcended mere policy disagreements. This land reform policy, however, must be understood within the complex historical context of South Africa. The country endured decades under the brutal apartheid regime, a system of racial segregation and oppression enforced by a white Afrikaner minority. This regime subjected the black majority to systematic violence, forced removals, and the creation of segregated townships and rural homelands, inflicting immense suffering and lasting trauma. The Afrikaner population, primarily descended from Dutch settlers who arrived in 1652, along with French Huguenot refugees, enjoyed a position of unchecked power and privilege for centuries, perpetuating a legacy of inequality that continues to shape South African society today. The current land reform efforts, while controversial, are framed by many as an attempt to address the historical injustices and profound economic disparities that persist as a direct consequence of apartheid. While some white South Africans claim discrimination under affirmative action laws designed to redress historical imbalances, the narrative often overlooks the deep-seated structural inequalities that these laws attempt to mitigate. The situation is incredibly nuanced, and simplistic characterizations obscure the complex realities on the ground. The vast majority of South Africans, overwhelmingly black, support the land reform program as a necessary step towards a more equitable society. The Secretary of State's inflammatory rhetoric, therefore, appears not only ill-considered, but also deeply insensitive to the historical realities of South Africa. By labeling Rasool a race baiter and focusing on his comments within the highly partisan context of the U.S. political climate, the U.S. government risks undermining its credibility and further exacerbating existing tensions. This outburst, far from advancing any meaningful dialogue or promoting understanding, serves only to deepen the divide and hinder any potential for productive engagement. The lack of a clear, reasoned explanation for the attack on Rasool raises serious questions about the true motives behind this highly controversial action. The broader implications of this escalating diplomatic crisis are yet to be fully understood, but it is clear that the path toward reconciliation and constructive dialogue has become significantly steeper. This incident underscores the urgent need for careful diplomacy, nuanced understanding, and a commitment to addressing the historical injustices that continue to shape the political landscape of South Africa. The international community must carefully consider the implications of such rhetoric and work to foster a more productive and respectful dialogue between the U.S. and South Africa.